Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day two of the second episode in our learning series of Sunbird. I hope all of you have been participating in the sessions so far and they've been engaging and useful. The recording for the same is also available on the Sunbird YouTube channel. So if you have happened to miss any of the sessions, I would highly encourage you to go and watch them. So just to introduce myself again, my name is Madhu and I head the Engineering and Implementation Lakestep Foundation. So with the many sessions done so far, Sunbird is very familiar to all of you, and many of you would have inferred a fair amount of details by now. We have specifically gone through the thinking on the functionality for learning and how it has been designed. We have specifically heard on the consumption layer with the various reference solutions available. We've heard of the sourcing tools that build and manage the digital learning assets. We've also had a deep dive session dedicated to the question bank creation and how to use it for sensing. Of the sessions that we had yesterday, we had a deep dive sessions on architecture, specifically on the content architecture. We had a deep dive session that walked you through sessions on how to actually understand the content creation, the various type of content types that are supported. So all of this, the underlying, all of this is powered by underlying tech digital infrastructure of Sunbird. So to set the context for the next session, it is important for me to turn the clock a little and walk you through some of the early thought process that we've had of how we went about building Sunbird. So I'm going to go a little back into a time, early days, into the origin, the early thought process that has shaped the platform to what it is of today. So when we were thinking of Sunbird in the early days, Sunbird was always meant to be a digital infrastructure as a public good and not a digital solution. It was always conceived to be built as a platform to cater to various actors, use cases that can be built on top of it. The guiding thoughts for Sunbird was to have an unbundled architecture, which emphasizes that we also enable and distribute the ability to solve, and not necessarily the platform has to be in the middle of all the solutions that can be thought through. The thought process was also about breaking it down to micro components and choosing what really needs to be built. So with all of this, we also had to think about scale. With it being modular, scalability was also a very important construct. So when building Sunbird, we had laid some guiding principles, and these have been our guardrails for all the development that has happened so far and that's happening. And we believe that this is the guiding principles that we would need to continue from here on. So again, in the early days, we started with this very simple statement that we said, we do not scale what works, but we build for scale from day one. So that actually made some of our decisions on the tech stack very fundamental and easy to decide. We also set the thinking of building for scale into every microservice and not asking the platform adopter to think of how to scale it. Another key mandate to the developers was to generalize what is being built so that the ability to reuse is very high. Our thought process has always been about building modular building blocks, enabling adopters to leverage what they want. We mandated our developers to use APIs, only APIs as a contract to communicate. Simply put, we sent across a very simple message: do not assume privileges. It's important for a platform of this scale that there is an ability to see. And that was a very early thought process on the entire module of telemetry. In fact, telemetry API was the first API written. We wanted to make sure that we'll be able to get enough data back to correct and improve the platform. And we have an ability to observe remotely and not react. There's also a huge focus on building monitoring capabilities, debugging tools, and of course, security and privacy ask for all of the underlying microservices was a necessity and mandate to the developers. So all of this had to be thought through in our architecture and also factor the reality that technology does change very rapidly. We also had to ensure that as an open source, we enable community participation by building interoperability capabilities that enable the ecosystem to leverage and build alongside the components that are already there. I know there's a lot of data, but so connecting all of this, we logically move into our next session. Our next session is a tech session, the first dedicated tech session in these learning series. This session will really help you demystify a lot of the words that I used over the last 5 minutes, right from how Sunbird is built on an unbundled architecture, the microservices, the building blocks, APIs, the ability to see security and privacy, all of them. So the upcoming session will be a deep dive into the architecture thinking of Sunbird and what it takes to host a Sunbird instance. It will also highlight how these components are designed for scale. So our next session is going to be anchored by Matthew. Matthew is our principal architect and has literally been one of our key pillars since the very early days of building the platform. Today, he'll walk us through the components and all the key design elements, and we'll also get a sense of the overview of the tools and underlying stack. As Monica said earlier, even I would highly encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A box, as we'll have some dedicated time at the end of the session to take questions. I'll also have, towards the end of the session, the other architects, two of our other architects join in and help answer a lot of the other questions that would come here. So handing it over to Matthew for this session. Enjoy.